4.2. Describe and evaluate the Michelson-Morley experiments attempt to measure the relative velocity of Earth through ether. So what is ether? And I explained it in 4.1. However, ether is, and they thought it was an object that filled up space that was a great elasticity, had extremely low density, and that it traveled at the speed of light, and that it could permeate all matter. So at that time, in terms of science, there was a lot of discussion around what ether was, and Michelson and Morley, as you'll know in this slide in the next video, look at their attempts to measure this movement or velocity of Earth through ether, because it's very of an interesting topic at that time. So the or Michelson and Morley experiment, they set up this large apparatus on a heavy rock which floated on mercury, and the reason for that mercury was that the vibrations of any movement would be limited. So floating on this mercury limited them from interference patterns. So the interferometer is used by Michelson and Morley to reflect light from a common source in two directions and then back to the observation point. You can see that in the diagram on the right. If the ether existed, then the light rays traveled with and against ether should have it interfere with each other, so there will be an interference pattern. So the Michelson and Morley experiments looked at the different speed of light relative to Earth depending on the direction that it's traveling through this ether. So they expected that if it was going against ether, that would make light travel a lot slower and that it would produce an interference pattern. If ether existed, then they thought this would happen. However, many accepted that this was a null result as evidence that ether did not exist, while other scientists still search for ether, blaming the null result on the experiment that was not accurate enough. But if you do your readings around Michelson and Morley, these were two pioneer scientists at that time in terms of setting up experiments, being diligent and being very efficient and effective in their results and producing reliable results. So many scientists then agreed, the consensus was that there was a null result and that ether did not exist.